Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, depending on where you're joining us from. We're just going to hang on a few minutes here to make sure that everybody who wants to join us is in. While we're waiting, why don't we all put where we're joining from in the chat window so we can kind of see how far away people are joining us from. So I am from beautiful Sanford, Michigan. How about you, Kyle? You're in Portland, aren't you?
Yep, Portland, Oregon.
And Sean's joining us from Atlanta today. Oh, we got Romania. It's always nice when we see people from some faraway place like that. Seattle. Nice. Greensboro, North Carolina. I believe I've been there. Long time ago. India, welcome. Ooh, Las Vegas. We haven't been there in too long. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and kick it off. You guys can continue to post your locations if you'd like. Welcome to this community conversation hosted by the Autodesk community. My name is Chris, and I'm going to be your community host today. It's my pleasure to welcome Kyle, who's going to be talking about drawings in Fusion 360. So let's kick it off here. Just a bit about this series for those of you joining for the first time. Community conversations are virtual meetups featuring expert speakers from across the community. Sessions range from deep dives, tips and tricks, live demonstrations on products like AutoCAD, Revit, Dynamo, Fusion, to roundtables on industry insights, emerging trends, career stories, and so much more. All experience levels from beginner to expert are always welcome to attend these meetings. Quickly, we put up our safe harbor statement so that you know that if we make any forward-looking statements at all in this session, please don't make any purchasing decisions based on those. If you're making any purchasing decisions about software, look at the software in its state today and that alone. And some quick ground rules here. We've got everybody's line muted to reduce the background noise. If you feel comfortable doing so, though, we invite you to turn your camera on. And we do want this to be a conversation. So if you have questions or comments during the presentation, go ahead and use the Zoom raise hand or put it in the chat. And I'll be keeping an eye on all of that throughout the session. And we will ask you to unmute yourself and just ask your questions. We'll also be taking questions at the end of Kyle's presentation, so feel free to speak up at any point. We are recording this session, and the recording will be emailed to everyone who is attending and also uploaded to the community conversation site. We do want to note that by participating in the session, you do consent to having yourself recorded. So he didn't join this to hear me talk for an hour, so I'm going to just quickly tell you who I am, and then I'm going to hand it over to Kyle and let him do his thing. So like I said, my name is Chris. I'm the community manager for product design and manufacturing here at Autodesk. I've been with Autodesk almost 2 years now, and prior to that, I was a customer and expert elite, mostly on the inventor side of things, so please don't hold that against me. I am starting to learn a little bit about Fusion, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation because drawings are something that I need to get a little bit more experience in. With that, Kyle, why don't you introduce yourself, and I will stop sharing and you can take over from here.
Perfect. So yeah, like Chris said, my name's Kyle Gilham. I'm a customer advocacy manager in the design and documentation workspace in Fusion 360. Similarly to Chris, I actually come from the inventor side as well, where I was the QA and customer engagement over there for quite a few years. Before that, I was actually a mechanical engineer in industry working with Inventor and a couple other CAD products. So let's just kick this right off. Short, real quick agenda before we get going. I'm gonna first start with a little bit of background on what Fusion 360 was, where drawings kind of came into that, and how drawings progressed kind of in the last couple of years. Just to give you a little bit of context of what we're talking about and why Fusion is the way that it is. And then from there on, we'll talk about everything that came into Fusion 360 starting in 2021, January, and then moving on from there all the way up until today. Just all of the different functionality that's in there. And then a little bit about what's going to be coming in the next couple months or years, along with the ability to look at a roadmap and maybe talk to any of the team members if you would like to. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A where you can ask me questions. I might not know all the answers. Like I said, I've been here for about a year in the Fusion 360 space. But if I don't know the answer, I will definitely take down your information and then we can chat about it maybe afterwards or get you in contact with someone who might know a little bit more. Or I can contact them, give you some information afterwards. So first off, let's talk a little bit about drawings in Fusion 360 and some of the history behind that. So first, 2013 is when Fusion 360 came out. And for those of you who remember that coming out, it actually started as Inventor Fusion, then moved over and was released as Fusion. And it was initially kind of a direct modeler, kind of targeted more at the industrial designer. One of the key elements in it was these T-splines and the ability to kind of make these direct modeling, really organic, cool shapes that you could make that weren't necessarily available in some other parametric modeling softwares. There's this real kind of up and coming software that we were developing, and again, more targeted at those types of industrial design customers that like to look at the aesthetic, but we weren't thinking that they really cared about wanting to document it as much, just looking for the 3D model and the shape of it. Moving forward, as we started developing this product, we were getting more and more requests that we did need some sort of drawing functionality. And you can see here in 2014 is when we added that first initial drawing capabilities, but they were very basic. They were the ability to dimension, the ability to add notes, title blocks, but not any of the real in-depth kind of tools that you need to create more of those professional type drawings for more of the industrial machineries or anything like that. It was really basic stuff for like parts, maybe some assemblies. Fast forward, after 2014, there was development in this area, but not a lot of focus on the drawings environment until 2020, right? Here you can see, this is actually a graph of all of what we call user stories. So user stories are features that we have that are defined that are going into the product. And so here you can see the blue is what's been done. The lighter blue or teal is what's to do. So those are the two main colors that you see there. And you can see this large uptick as there's a couple teams that were added to the space. Along with a PM that was dedicated to this area as well. And so we really started heavily investing in making sure that drawings were usable for all of the people that are trying to now use Fusion 360 in day-to-day production. And so you can see that 2020 investment and the increase in drawing functionality that we're going to look at as we go forward. So I won't go through all of the functionality, obviously from 2020 on. I'm simply going to look at 2021 to the current state, but you can see that even before that time, we were heavily investing in this area. So with that, let's talk about what's happened since 2021. And we'll start in the January update 2021. This wasn't a huge release for drawings, but we did add a new feature that was nice to have. And that was this taper and slope command. This taper and slope command is following the ISO 3040 standard. And you can also add some normal and theoretically exact dimensions. And now, just to give a little bit of background of why we're going over all this stuff, I want to really give you an idea of, if you haven't looked at drawings since 2020, what's all the new stuff that you can now use in Fusion 360 drawings. And so that's what we're going to go through today. Like, these are all of the new features that are coming out and how you can use them. What are the new functionality that you can play with, and all of the different features that go on in there. So here you can, again, add normal and theoretical exact dimensions to a taper and slope command. Really nice little improvement. And you'll see that as we're going forward, that's kind of what happens is you have some bigger features that come in, but they also are trying to make sure that the quality of life enhancements also are getting added, not just these huge commands that come in. So in April, a larger improvement came in, and that's the ability to have broken views. So again, for those of you who are not as familiar, broken views are the ability to take a view and shorten the length. So here you can see in this video what we did was we had a pipe that was going to be outside of our drawing width. And so you can use this broken view to shorten that up because you don't really care about what's on the inside because there's no features there to dimension. You just care about the overall length. But again, you can see that even though we broke that view down and shortened it, it still retains that overall length so that you're dimensioning the true length instead of what's shortened on the view. So nice little feature that we had here. This is, again, standard in a lot of CAD packages, but hadn't been introduced into Fusion 360 yet. Here, we weren't able yet to do vertical and horizontal. You'll see that in a couple of the upcoming slides. We were just able to do either horizontal or vertical, but a nice improvement in that April update. Next, we came to July, and this is kind of, again, where the quality of life enhancements come in. And that's just the ability to have this in Canvas continue button. And not only is this a quality of a life enhancement, but it also makes it so that what the tools you're using or the features that you're used to having in the design area are also available in the drawings environment. So a lot of the commands in the design area have the ability to have that continue button right at your mouse tip so that you're not having to right click and say okay or any of that stuff. It's just right there. When you place the dimension, you can click okay, or you can click that green checkbox to say okay. It makes that one less click that you have to do, which for those using it day in and day out, removing clicks is always something that is not seen as very high priority necessarily on the development team, but for a user using it every day, super nice to have. So that's something that we are trying to make sure that we target as well, is not only, again, going after the big items, but going after those quality of life that makes your life just a little bit easier when you're day in, day out in the product. So here you can see we have it for surface textures, we have it for feature control frames, datum IDs, weld symbols, taper and slope. So all of those symbols now have that in Canvas continue button. Next, in the August update, and we have a couple of different items here, and they're similar though. So there's a custom line width group, and then there's going to be a custom text height group. Now you were able to do line width groups of very thin, medium, thick, and very thick, but you didn't have control over what those line widths actually were. Or so say you did medium, those line widths for thin, medium, and thick lines were now fixed. You couldn't actually make any adjustments to them. So if they weren't quite right, you really didn't have any recourse to go ahead and change that. And so this is an area where we added some functionality. We just added a custom command. And so now if you went in, said custom, now I get to dictate what the thin line width is, medium line width, thick line width. Now these are still drop downs that have set line widths. So you're not going to be able to type in like a 0.22. It'll go in increments still, but it still gives you more control over the look and feel of your drawing, which is what a lot of drafters like to have. And so really nice, again, quality of life enhancement that you have there. It maximizes your productivity. Line widths can be configured also in your drawing templates. So for those that are wanting to, instead of having to change them on each individual drawing going forward, you could go ahead and create a template, change that to a custom line width where you decide where the thin, medium, and thick line widths are, and then go ahead and use that template over and over again, improving that productivity. And then similarly is the ability to change the text height groups to a custom text height group. So again, we have the ability to have small, medium, and large text sizes. And what that allows you to do is change what you can see here is small, which is used in tolerances, medium, which is used in dimensions and tables, and large, which is used in those balloons and view labels. Now, again, we had the ability to do the medium, the large, all of those, but if you had a little bit of a different view of what those should look like, you weren't able to change that, or you didn't have as much control. So this just lets you independently change those text heights so that you had a little bit more control of what the drawing overall look and feel looks like. So again, nice little productivity enhancement. Similarly, you could also set this in the templates. So those could be used on all of the drawings going forward. So nice enhancements for the August update. Now, again, this is all in 2021. So this is the September update for 2021. And there's two big things that came in here. This is a little bit smaller, and then we had a bigger update on the second slide. But this was a nice to have that people have been asking for. Up until this point, all we had the ability to dimension in was millimeters and inches, which is problematic if you have stuff that's larger and need feet for, and also the ability to have meters and centimeters. Actually, let's pause right here. Glenn looks like he had a question. Can the balloon command have the surface option to be incorporated, please? Right now, only edge option is supported. That's a good request, Glenn. And I'm going to wait and talk a little bit more about how you can maybe ask some of those things from the team going forward, and where you can see where the roadmap is. So hold that question. We'll definitely get to any kind of feature requests you guys have. So we added the ability to have feet, meters, and centimeters now as dimension types in your drawings, which is a really nice thing for those, again, having a little bit bigger assemblies or parts. So if you're in more of the scale of feet, or maybe some architectural type items, that was not able to be done. It always had to be in inches. So this allows you for those additional units of measurement. We also added some dimensions formats. So fractional, engineering, and architectural. These were in if you had switched over to the imperial units, this wasn't in SI units, but in imperial units, you were able to change those dimensional formats. So here you can see that this is in, I believe, the fractional format. You could also do the architectural, which is similar. And then we had the ability to arrange dimension. This was one of my favorite commands that came in, and it allows for you to select a bunch of texts or select a bunch of dimensions that were all kind of skewed and out of place, and allows you to arrange those so that they all lined up. What was nice about this is not only could you do that arrange in a single view, but you could actually select dimensions across views and use that arranged dimensions to make it all aligned in the drawing. Makes your drawing look that much more professional and neat and tidy, which again, for a lot of drafters is really nice to have. Not only can you align it, say, linearly so that they all line up linearly, you can also arrange them vertically. So it would give you the ability to change the spacing. And so you could arrange them for a specific spacing between your stacked dimensions, so that they all, again, had that nice clean look where they all look uniform going forward. And then the last thing that was added to September, which was a really nice enhancement, was the ability, again, we had break views back in, I believe I said the March timeframe, but this allowed you to do break views in two separate planes. So you could do both vertical and horizontal. But what the team did was, and you'll see this a lot going forward in drawings, is not only do they add the functionality, but they give you a little bit of additional functionality that you're not going to get in other programs. So what's nice about this is not only can I add a break view into the base view, it also propagates to the projected views, which is common in other CAD packages. But you could also create the break view in a projected view, and it would go back to the base view. And so this is functionality that's a little bit nicer than other stuff that's on the market. It's really easy to use. And then any changes, again, get propagated both from and to the base view and projected views. So they all kind of work in tandem as you move those break views around. Really nice piece of functionality there. And I've got a video here to kind of show off some of this, this functionality. And our PM here created this video. He did a really nice job kind of showing off what we're talking about when we say the ability to create break views both in the base view and in this projected view. So here you can see we're going to create this projected view, or we're going to create this break actually in the projected view. And you notice that it actually propagates up to the base view, which is really nice to have. And here he's going to show again that you can go ahead and do the projected view off to the side. And again, it updates, and any changes can be done on any of the views. So we didn't actually make those changes in the side view or in the base view, but any change in the base view changes it. And this is going to go through a little bit of the arrange functionality. So you'll be able to see this as well. And here you'll see the difference between linear arrangements and then more of that stack arrangement. So here you can see you can change the type of arrangement here, and you have the ability to change the spacing depending on how big your drawing is. That really just makes the drawing look that much more professional, I think. Just looks a lot cleaner. And here you can see you can change the spacing.
We did get a question up here in the chat from Stuart.
Will you be any online training sessions like we used to have on a Thursday with Brad Tallis? Those were really useful. That is a different team than the one I'm on. I don't know if Brad and his team are, I know they're not doing that anymore. I don't know if there's any plans to incorporate those again. I know we have online learning, so you can go to the learning portal for some of this stuff. And then the YouTube channel typically will have all of the new features coming out. They'll have a tutorial on all of the kind of bigger workflows that are coming out as well. So that's kind of what's replaced it. I don't think, Chris, if you know of anything on your guys' side that you're planning on doing, I think that those have been replaced by these conversations. And,
yeah, we are planning to do some more of these conversations. I have a short schedule that I'm going to present toward the end of this session showing what's coming up this month. And then stay tuned, and every month we will post the upcoming schedule of community conversations for that month. And there's been quite a few Fusion ones that are being added to this, so stay tuned.
Thanks for the question, Stuart. So again, going back to the dimension types, you'll notice that you can change it at the drawing level, or you can change it in the individual dimension type as well. So if you have one dimension specifically that you're wanting to dimension differently in a different type of unit, you can go ahead and do that as well. And here, so this is actually a change that didn't get on the slide, but is kind of a nice also, is the ability to have these alternate units. So that hadn't been available again previously in Fusion 360, and was something that the team has added. So really big update for September. They really did a great job of adding some real nice functionality there. If possible, can you please change the orientation of dimension from vertical to horizontal in a drawing? I would have to double check on that. I think that might be dependent on the standard that you're using, but I would have to double check. Good question though, Kieran. So then came January. So this was the January release in 2022. So we're in this current year now. And this was more of this was a standards and quality of life improvement that we had here, but really nice quality of life improvement. So if you're into going back to the standards part, if you're in the welding area and know very much about the welding standards, we were just updating the welding standards from the older one to the 2012 AWS 2.4. So for those outside of that, might not have been a big change, but I think for those using the standards for calling out weldments and weld symbols, this was a nice improvement that they had going forward. And then the other couple of things, there were just kind of some gaps that they were cleaning up, which they did a really great job of. One was the attaching the feature control frames to the dimensions and the leaders. This was really nice to have. Before this, anytime you were changing dimensions, you would have to go ahead and update your feature control frame as well. Now that they just attached, they all move together. Everything's really clean. You're not going to have times where you accidentally move something and forgot to update the feature control frame or vice versa, and then your drawing looks a little bit off. It's all working together, and the ability to snap it in is actually a pretty easy function to use. So they made it really usable. And so I actually was the one that created this. It was so much easier to create this drawing with some of those updates. So they really did a great job of that kind of usability, quality of life enhancement. You also have the ability to add a thread note to external threads. So this was not possible before. And this is specifically, you could add a note and add the information, right? But this is specifically saying I'm taking the information from the model, right? Which is kind of the point of some of these drawings, is that the information's already in the model. I shouldn't have to re-enter that into the drawing, right? And so beforehand, you weren't able to bring that thread information from the model that you already had there into the drawing, and now they added that capability. So if you're doing a note and clicked on an external thread, now you're going to go ahead and have that information already populated there. And then thread notes could be applied to threads on non-hole features. So up until this time, if you had a thread on, say, an extruded circle, it wouldn't actually work with the thread notes, but now it will do that. So before it had to be in a hole feature, now it can do it on thread, add it to anything. This was really important for those importing geometry. So if you're importing any kind of geometry and then adding some features to it, that could be a roadblock. So they were listening to customers having these issues and saying, okay, we can fix this. So that's what they did in this update. Next, we got to March, and March was another where they added a couple of really big items that were really nice to have. And the first was the ability to have hole tables. And again, it shows that not only are they adding the functionality that people are asking for, but they're going a little bit above and beyond to make it that much easier to use. And so the first thing that you'll notice in the hole tables, again, is a hole table like you would use in other CAD projects. People have been asking for a while. But a couple of the nice things that they added too were the ability to have it follow the standard that people were specifying for their drawings. So if you used an ISO standard or an ASME standard, it would actually change the description to follow those standards, what the standard says should be called out. So that changes a little bit of the symbology that goes in there. And you don't have to think about it. So all you do is set the standard, and then the whole table automatically updates for you. The origins are more to standard than some other origins that we have in other or that are in other products. So these are using the standard ASME and ISO origin points, but also gives you the option to go back to those other points if you're more used to, say, the circle with the black and white. So you have the option to do both, but this is the actual more correct standard. In addition, it updates obviously when you change the origin, which is again a nice to have. So you're not having to go ahead and create another whole table if you want to go ahead and move that origin. And just as an FYI, this is specifically for holes that are created with the hole feature. So this is going to pick up any holes with the hole feature. So just be aware of that as you're creating these drawings going forward. What does this encircled M in geometric measures is an ANSI standard? I think you're talking back here in this. And so this is part of GD&T. So this is called a maximum material condition. It has to do with how you measure it going forward and what the tolerance is. So typically on something like this, and you're straining my knowledge on GD&T. I haven't looked at it in a while. Has to do with if you're measuring it at a certain diameter, say here. This tolerance actually changes based on what the actual measurement is. And so you can see this needs to be perpendicular to 0.08, but it has to be, I believe, perpendicular to 0.08 at the maximum material, so 44.6. And then I believe as you go down to like the 44.5, you get a little bit more tolerance there. And I might have actually reversed that. I can't remember if it's going up or down, but that's the basics of it. And again, you would need to consult a GD&T expert in this, or the ASME Y14.5, I believe is the ASME version. I can't remember what the ISO version is that does something similar. Yeah, again, thanks, Chris. GD&T is geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. So that's what that is. M is the maximum material condition. You'll also see L, which is least material condition, and there's a couple others. Okay, so hole feature, really nice feature, again, that we added, something that users have been asking for a while. You can see why this would be very useful in a part that has this many holes in it. Very difficult to dimension in a more regular format where you're adding actual dimensions to each one of these. So much easier to have a hole table, which shows all of the different positions and the different holes that are being called out in that. And then next was the ability to add revisions. So this is the ability to have a new command that creates the revision table and then actually controls the revision process for you. Now, this is not part of a PDM system. This is actually separate from that. So this allows anyone that's using Fusion 360 to now create revisions a little easier. Before you could create this, but it would be through just a general table. Now you have a dialog box that pops up and has the ability to add revisions that way. And what's nice about this dialog box is it allows you to kind of pick and choose which columns you want to have. So here you can see I've got rev, description, date, and approved. But if you wanted to add some more, I believe they have a couple more categories that are able to add, or if you wanted to subtract some of these, you could do that as well. What's nice about this too is that that dialog box actually keeps all of the revisions there permanently or indefinitely. What's nice about that is as you get up in the revision, in the revisions, right? So if I get to HJK revision, this becomes a little unwieldy if you have all of those revisions there. And in older products, what you would end up having to do is you'd have to delete some of those lines out. What's problematic with that is you go to the current revision and you want to say, what happened in revision A? I actually have to go back to older drawings to figure out what happened in revision A. Here, you're going to be able to hide those, but they still keep all of that information in the drawing. And so what happens is it has the ability to hide based on how many you want at any time. So if you say, I only want 3 revisions shown at a time, you can actually set that in the dialog box. It'll go ahead and hide any, if you create a new revision and you're at 4, it'll hide the oldest one, but that information is actually still there. It's just hidden. And so if you ever need to go back and say, okay, what happened in revision A, you can just unhide revision A in the drawing and you'll see what the changes were that were made. Now with that, you also had the ability, not only can you make the revision table, but you can also create revision markers that are going to highlight the areas where revisions were made in the drawing. And also the ability, like Chris was showing, to have revision clouds. And so those revision clouds are now available. Again, does a similar thing where it kind of highlights the changes that have been made. So something that had been requested for a little while now, and we were able to add that into the March release.
I just have one question, Kyle.
Yeah.
How did my initials end up on that drawing?
I don't, well, you, I think, share initials with our PM.
Wow.
Because Clint Brown, I don't know his middle name, but apparently it's also G.
Must be a G. All right.
So next time you talk to him, you can start off by saying, hey, we have the same initials.
There you go.
That's funny. Okay, so that's everything. So the March release was the last thing that was released. So that's everything that's been added to the drawing space. Again, you can see how much has been added. It's not quite a year and a half yet. How much has been added to the drawings workspace in just that short amount of time. That's not even including all of the work that went in before that in 2020, the year 2020. And that's not everything that's going to be coming. So we have a little bit of what's next. So we have a couple of things coming in the pipeline. Again, this is going back to our safe harbor. This is not released yet. So don't make purchasing decisions about what I'm talking about right now. But just want to give you a taste of what the team is still kind of working on. And so one of the things that the team's working on is this Jogged Arc Dimension. These are really nice to have when you are doing these really large radiuses, because what would happen if you created a normal radius command or normal radius dimension here is that the radius would actually go off the sheet, and that causes problems, obviously. And so this is the ability to create this nice jogged radius where everything is just in that one view, makes it a little cleaner, neater, and it's kind of a nice tool to have in your arsenal. And then the last, or the second one is this arc length dimension. So these are the two new dimension types. These are new dimension types as well. So you have to specify that you're looking for an arc length dimension. So you can see that they're here in this dimension area. And again, this just allows you to dimension an arc length. So again, something that users have been requesting for a little while now. In addition to that, we have two new areas that we've improved in the properties or mass overrides. So the first is the attributes and properties. In the past, I didn't really go through this because it's specifically for the manage extension. But if you had manage extension back in November, we gave the ability to take manage extension properties and put them in the title block, which is really nice. That also led us to say, hey, what if people also want some of their model properties in the title block as well? And so we are now allowing you to add some model properties into the title block. So if you've worked with the title block at all, you can edit the title block and add new attributes. There's 4 new attributes that are now available in that dropdown. And so the 4 new attributes are these part number, part name, material, and mass. So you can now add those to the title block if you're wanting them there. And kind of with that, separate but kind of in tandem with that, is the ability to change the mass properties or the override the mass units. And so a lot of times it would be directed by the drawing, what mass units you're using. Now you can actually say, I want it to either follow the model, I want it to follow the drawing, or I want to override it and pick my own. So if you have a specific mass unit that you're wanting to use and say the part is using or the model is using something else, you can go ahead and just override it. And this can be done both in the title block. So now that you can add that model mass property, you can also override that mass unit. But you can also do it in the parts list as well. So you can add mass to the parts list, and now you can override that mass unit. And you've been able to add the mass for a while. You've never been able to override that mass unit. And the last thing that's coming is the auxiliary views. Now, this isn't an overview of everything that's coming. This is just some of the next things that are coming that I want to entice you guys with. But auxiliary views is something that's been, again, requested for a while. It's in a lot of other products, but the team did a really great job. You can click any edge now and go ahead and pull it off either parallel or perpendicular to the edge that you've selected. And what that really allows you to do is it allows you to now look at items that are not necessarily at those 90-degree offsets that most views, projected views, come off of. So here you can see I've got some holes that I'm wanting to dimension that are really going to be hard to look at straight on if you didn't have an auxiliary view. So in the past, what you would have to do in Fusion is you'd have to go to the model, you'd have to do a look at of that face, and you have to create a named view, and then you put that named view on, but it wasn't linked to the view, right, to the base view, and so it could just go anywhere on the page. And so this allows for that nice linked view of a angle that is not going to be that 90-degree angle that you would typically have, and allows you to say dimension these straight on. Another nice thing that you can do is you can actually use the edges of holes. So any of these holes that you see here that have a dotted line, you can also select those. So if you have a hole that's going through a curved plate, you also have the ability to select that hole edge, and so that you can look directly down at that hole in a curved plate. So really nice piece of functionality that you have coming up. Are you looking to adding the ability to change the color of the fonts? I don't think that's on the roadmap, and that's actually what I'm going to talk about a little bit next, Harvey. So give me a second. And what I'll show next is, so the Fusion 360 drawings team actually has a public roadmap that they continually work on. And I'm going to switch over to it right now to kind of show you what I'm talking about. And I believe Chris will be posting that link in the chat as well. Thank you, Chris. And this is what you're going to see. And so you can see a bunch of stuff of what we've already done, but then you can also see what the team's working on next, or what they're looking at working on. And here you can see the things that have just been implemented. So here you can see the revision tables that I talked about, revision markers, revision clouds. You can also see things that are getting ready or close to ready. So some of the things I just talked about are getting close to ready. And then things that are in the backlog or on deck. So these are areas, if you have questions about, hey, is this in the backlog, or are they thinking about working on this? If it's not in here, it might be lower on the backlog, but these are kind of top of mind, what the team's looking at. So if you have any of those kind of questions, this is where you can ask those questions, or you can answer those questions for yourself. And then if you have additional questions that you're kind of curious about and want to directly ask the team, there is this ability to directly email the Fusion Drawings team. Again, if all of you are doing that, or like if we post this on YouTube and everyone does that, you just realize that there might be a lot of people emailing at one time. So just keep that in mind as they try and get back to you. That the process might take a little bit longer, but the team's really great at working with customers. They're always looking for new and new areas that the customers are interested in us looking at. They'll always enjoy a conversation. And that's the other thing that you have here, is the ability to actually click on this link and schedule a time to kind of talk with someone on the team. So if that's something that you're interested in, they have these slots open up that you can talk directly with the team and kind of give them your background and what you're working on. They always love hearing from customers about what the customer's working on and the struggles that are coming up in drawings. And it could be that it's already there and it's just not very discoverable. So they'll walk you through that. But if it's something that they think a lot of users would benefit from, any suggestions that you have, they're very likely to put it in here. And you can see this little light bulb here on any of these means that these are coming directly from the customer. So there's quite a few in the backlog right now that came directly from you, the customer, as requests for the drawing, and it did get in our backlog, and we are planning on working on that and implementing it into Fusion. So with that, I'll go back to my PowerPoint slides. And this is the point of the show, where if you have any questions, additional questions, that we can open up for questions.
Nobody wants to be the first one. That's always the case.
That's right. Did I answer all of them already? Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
I did put a note in the chat a little bit further up that if you think of questions after the session has ended, you can go to the community conversations page for today's session, and there is a comment section, and you can add your questions there, and we'll be keeping an eye on that. And if anything new comes up, I can make sure that Kyle knows about it, and he can either answer it or find the right person to answer it. And I did post the link for that, so if you want to bookmark that, that's a great way to keep the conversation going even after we stop the recording today.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
I always say I often am only just the person that knows the answer. So I rarely know the
That's
answer.
usually me as well.
Yeah. I know the guy to talk to though.
Right. Thank you. Good comment there. Session was so interesting. I found it interesting too, because I haven't had a lot of time to spend working with drawings in Fusion. I'm still learning a lot of the modeling techniques and how they compare to Inventor. So this was very nice to see some of the advancements that are being made on the drawing side of things.
Yeah. It's very cool. Is there a way to create drawings of nested parts? I don't think so yet, because I think they need to come directly from the design environment. You can try it out, but my initial thought is no, but I will try it on my end after this and see if that's not true. But that's my, if I'm wrong and I can do it, then I'll go ahead and get in contact with you and show you the workflow to do it. But my initial thought is that you can't. Anyone's more than welcome to unmute as well. This can be more of a conversation if that's what you prefer.
Yeah, if you want to unmute and
Chat also works.
Comments.
Mm-hmm.
I hear crickets.
Yeah. So Chris, can I pass back to you then?
Yes, if you would like to, I will share my screen back up. And if there are no more questions or comments, then we can give you a little bit of time back and wrap this up. So, are you seeing my screen, Kyle?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a few more of these Fusion 360 community conversations coming up this month. I think we have one every week this month. We have one next week with a machine stimulation. Another one, the Wednesday, May 18th, that is Phil Eichmiller talking about pretty much anything Fusion 360. Bring him your questions, your comments. He loves to talk about Fusion 360. He just loves to talk. And then on Wednesday, May 25th, we have Richard Hamrell and Jorge Garcia talking about anything you wanted to know about Fusion electronics. So those three are all upcoming. Use the Community Conversations calendar link that Sean shared earlier, and I can put it in the chat again right now for you. And make sure you get your name signed up for those. You don't want to miss out on these. Now the Phil Eichmiller and Richard Hamrell sessions, those are monthly. We usually do those about the same time every month. So keep an eye on the calendar for when new sessions are coming up. I want to thank Kyle. I want to thank Sean for helping me out in the background, and thank all of you for attending today. When we do post the recording for this session, we're also going to be sending an email with a survey, and we would really love it if you would fill out the survey. It doesn't take very long. It's just a couple of questions, and it really will tell us how we're doing with these, if what you liked, what you didn't like, and how we can improve on them in the future. So please take a moment when you get your email and fill out the surveys on this. If you have an idea for a community conversation that you think you would like to host, we have an opportunity for you to do that. There is a community conversations proposal link that I'm going to put in the chat right now. 1 second. So if you have an idea for one that you would like to put together for the future, go ahead and fill out the proposal form, or as it shows on the slide, you can also reach out to Sean, who runs our program for us, and maybe talk to him about what your ideas are, and he might be able to give you some pointers on how to get the form filled out properly and get your idea on the schedule. And we also want to share with you a whole bunch of links that are for our various community resources. This is going to be a huge list, so I'm going to just post this in the chat. Feel free to bookmark as many, if not all, of these as you would like. Obviously, most of you are probably already familiar with our community forums. That's probably the #1 way to chat with us and communicate with the teams. We have our community groups, which are it's a network of user groups around the world, basically. You can check out our new Community Voices blog, which is a blog by the community for the community. These are community members posting their articles and ideas and thoughts and tips and tricks and whatever's on their mind. Plus, we also have our community journal blog, which is the blog that we as the community team put out for you with news and information about upcoming programs, industry highlights, all kinds of great things like that. We're doing a whole series of member highlights as well, both community members and community team members. And of course, don't forget our community conversations. So let's see, we did get a question here. What is the best way to handle large assemblies with many components?
Daniel, are you talking about large assemblies in drawings specifically, or are you talking in general large assemblies in Fusion?
Drawings.
Okay. I don't know of any way. I mean, you can turn off components, right? When you're placing a drawing or after you place a drawing, but I don't think the team has really worked on the performance aspect of it as much as adding new functionality. So really, I think the focus so far has been, let's add the functionality that users are requesting. I haven't heard of any kind of improvements to the performance aspect of it. I think maybe some have come in the background. Yeah, I think it was back in November timeframe that some may have come in, but again, I think it was all background stuff that you wouldn't actually be aware of in terms of like the underlying algorithms. But I don't know of any settings that you can do that are specifically tailored for large assemblies yet. But I think the team does know that that is an area that they will eventually have to work on. So again, an area where you can maybe talk to the team if you want to go ahead and send them an email and say, here's the assembly I'm looking at, here's where we're having problems. Anytime you can send a team member a data set and a specific issue that you're working on, that is gold to our development teams in terms of being able to help reproduce and understand what your workflows are. So anytime you can do that, super appreciated from our side.
Absolutely. So unless there are further questions, I think that wraps this up. Thank you everyone for coming. Make sure you bookmark these links before you leave, and we'll see you on the next community conversation next week.
Thanks everyone.